Hello and welcome to day 14 of the 100-day project in my version, which is 6 by 6 and 6. Today we are making what I call movable or removable tabs. And if you watched any of the previous days, 2 days ago we made this, and I told you we were going to be using, we made this 6 by 6 page with 4 pockets, well 3 pockets plus the opportunity for a 4th pocket. And I told you we'd be using the scraps from this for the next couple days. And then yesterday we used some of those scraps and we made these tags that have clips on them. And today we are going to be using some more of those scraps. And again, we're going to be using paper clips, but we're going to be using them to make these removable tabs. And these are nice because they allow you to mark where you are in your junk journal or your scrapbook or your planner, or you can even use them on the sides of cards. They really simple, really fun, and they're just kind of cute. And so we are going to be using the scraps for that. And also we're going to have enough scraps left over to use scraps for tomorrow's project as well. So these scraps are going to last us a couple days. Now, again, this project is really quick, way less than 6 minutes, but the talking is going to get me in trouble. And I've made a couple different samples, and you can see they have different size paper clips on the back. These two have the jumbo clips or the larger clips, and this one has a small standard size paper clip. I'm sure you can see it in there. And I didn't mark down the measurements. Well, the measurements are subjective because you can really customize these to what you like. This one ended up being 1.5 inches by 1 inch, and this turns out to be my favorite size. But you can do what you want, and I'm going to show you here in the journal that I'm currently working on what I mean by that. So when you're working on your journal, sometimes if you've got like a big one like I do, or even a smaller one, you want to keep track of where you are. And you can just take these and put them, well, maybe you can, put them on the side of your page to give you an idea of where you're working next. So it's removable. I mean, sometimes tabs are permanent and you want them there to, like this, delineate the different categories. But sometimes you also want it to be removable so that you can change it as you're working. This particular clip has a 1/2 inch, which is my handy dandy measuring tool. 1/2 inch is about 1.2 centimeters. So sorry, about 1.2 centimeters. The overlap, the amount that it comes over the edge of your page once you've clipped it on is about 1/2 inch. And that was a little bit farther than I liked it. It came out a little bit too far off the side of the book, I thought. So, and it was also, where the heck did I put? Oh, there. It was a little bit wider than I wanted. So I made a little bit smaller and I changed them up a little bit, and I'm going to put them on a blank page just so you can see. Here we go. You can see what they look like on a page. And this book is 7 inches by 8.5 inches, so about 17.8 centimeters by 21.5 centimeters. So about that. And it's got a bigger spine. So it's a bigger book, but the total dimension, it's got a fat spine, but the total dimension isn't super big. So it's fairly standard is what I'm trying to say. And so I'm going to show you here, you can see what these different clips looked like put in this book. So you can see which size you want. And these are graduated down. For example, this is the largest, let's see, am I in the frame? This is the largest one I made, and it measures 2.5 inches by 1.25 inches. So 2.5 inches is about 6.4 centimeters, and then 1.25 is roughly 3 centimeters. So that's the largest. That's the largest one I made. Right. Let's see if I can get in there right there. And I think it's a little bit too big, unless that was my only page embellishment. So if that was all I had, then it would be okay size-wise. And then they go down by 1/4 inch increments all the way down. If I had something else on the page, I really like this size. And this size, which is I'm sorry, this size. This is the 1 inch by 2 inch. So 1 inch by 2 inch, which is 2.5, roughly 2.5 centimeters by 5 centimeters, roughly. And that's the size we're going to make today. So you can just see there, make which size suits you, because you do them all essentially the same way. Also, all of the ones that I've got here use eyelets, but I did do one sample that didn't use eyelets. I made, let's see if I can get it up close enough. I made a little paper fake eyelet, basically, to hold it so that when you move this or pull on this or turn the page, that it gives it more stability. And I'm going to show you real quick how to do that too. It's kind of like what we've done in previous videos, but I just use smaller, 2 different sizes of smaller circle punches. So there you go. That's essentially what we're making, and that's what's the use for. Now, again, if this were a pocket, do I have any pockets in this one? I'm sure I have a pocket somewhere. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So if this was our pocket, I could change my orientation of this and make this a pocket tab. Let's see, am I in frame without knocking the camera? Okay, I could make this a top tab for my pocket, and I could decorate the front of it so that I could use it that way. But for the purposes of this, it's a removable tab. Again, make it how you want it and make it work for what you need. All right, so we are going to be using, there's a lot of different supplies for this just because you have options. So I'm going to be using the scraps that we have left over from the last 2 days. You are going to need some kind of jump ring tools. Oh, not necessarily. You don't necessarily have to have those. I have used jump rings to put charms on these. But you can use bulb pins. So if you don't like jump rings or don't have jump rings or don't have the tools and you just want to use a bulb pin, use a bulb pin. It works exactly the same way, and it gives you the same effect, and it's actually not let's see my frame there, any more bulky. So you can use jump rings if you don't. You can use bulb pins if you don't want to use jump rings. So I'm going to use jump rings, so that's why I need these particular tools. Again, you're going to need bulb pins if you don't want jump rings. You will need paper clips. Now, after playing with this a little bit, these are what they call, quote unquote, in the US, jumbo size paper clips. And these measure about 2 inches, which is about 5 centimeters, 5.1 centimeter or something like that. They're just shy of 2 inches. And these work just great, but I find they're a little bit big for what I want them to do. I actually prefer the smaller standard size paper clip for this project, which is roughly 1.25 inches, which is about 3.3 centimeters. So I'm going to be using this one today. So you need a paper clip, or paper clips if you're going to make more than one, because they go quick. You will need a ruler for your paper. I'm going to use clamps because I like clamps. You certainly don't have to have something dangle, but that's just kind of the fun of this. I find the heavier pieces you use, like I brought some charms here, the heavier pieces tend to pull down the, let's see if I can, like the larger charms. These heavier, larger charms tend to pull down the weight of the page, or the weight of the clip. They stay, but they tend to make it move at an angle. So for this particular project, the way I want to use these, I like the smaller beads or smaller charms, lighter weight. Like this one's a real lightweight charm. There we go. This one's a real lightweight charm. So either beads or charms, whichever you want to use. If you're going to be going the jump ring route, you need a couple jump rings. I am going to show you how to do the eyelets. So my sample uses eyelets. So I'm going to use this to put the eyelet in. It's the only thing I need for the tweezers for, but I'm going to use that. I'm also going to show you how to do it with paper if you don't want to go with eyelets, and so you're going to need a couple small circle punches for that. And that's kind of like just a bonus option. You're going to need eyelets if you're going to do this. These are the standard, I think they're 3/16 of an inch eyelets, which is the most common ones. But these are little itty bitty guys, and they were really popular, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago in the scrapbook world. And I still really like them. And I like the low, here's one with the sample. I like the, there we go. Is it in frame? Yeah. I like the low profile it gives you on this. So I'm going to use those today. And in order for me to see that, I have to use a pair of tweezers. So That's why those are there. I'm going to need some double-sided tape to tape down my paper clip, and I am going to need some kind of an X-Acto or Stanley knife or a pen knife, some kind of a knife where I can cut just a small slit. And ink if you're going to ink things, and a corner rounder if you want the corners rounded. Here, the corners are squared, and here the corners are rounded, and I just like the smoothness that the rounded corners give you, but either way it just works fine. And wet glue. You need wet glue. I don't know if I said that. And I think that's pretty much all you need. A paper trimmer to trim this down to the size that you want, whatever size you want to create. There's a couple different options with this too. Now these are cardstock, so I just folded them over once, and it is plenty sturdy. If you wanted it to be a little heftier, you could double it over. So in other words, I would fold it and then fold it to make it a little bit thicker. But for today's project, this is plenty thin. And again, I am going to be making this 1 inch by, I think it was 2 inch. I know I've forgotten, I've got so many samples out here. Oh, this was the smaller one I made. Yeah, I like this size a lot. So this is roughly, oh, here we go, 1.5 inches by 1 inch. And so that's the one I'm going to make. And again, I'm going to be using a smaller paper clip. All right, so get some of this stuff out of the way. Oh, backed up. If you're going to use eyelets, you need an eyelet setter of some sort. And certainly you can use the big one that most of us have and most of us use, the We Are Memory Keepers eyelet setter. But you can go back old school, and this may take some of you way back. If you go on Amazon and you don't have an eyelet setter, they offer you a bunch of different kinds. They have this spring-loaded eyelet setter, which is you kind of hold it at an angle like this, at a 90-degree angle, you bring it up and down, and it sets the eyelet. There's little interchangeable pieces that you take on and off the end. And then there's like the original ones, which is an eyelet setter like this, which works for most sizes, and it's got a little hammer, and you put the little setter bit on the back of the eyelet, and you tap it with a hammer. And then to make it flush, you use this other little bit, which has a concave edge, and you put it on and you tap it, and that makes it smooth. So this particular one separates it, and this particular one makes it smooth or flat. So because I'm working with the itty bitty eyelets today, I need a different tool with an itty bitty attachment. The We Are Memory Keepers one doesn't have a small enough attachment for that. So I'm going to be using that. All right, and then I am going to cut, because I liked this size. I like, what was it? I've forgotten. I've only said it 3 times. That's right, 1 inch by 1.5 inches. I'm going to make it this size, 1 by 1.5. Okay. And I am going to, you know what? We haven't done much with the yellow, so I'm going to use the yellow. So we've got this leftover sheet from the yellow, and this is, if memory serves me right, we did 2.5 inches, so this should be 3.5 inches. This particular piece, yeah, it's 3.5 inches, which is 9 centimeters. So because I wanted to work with a 1 inch, I wanted to make the 1 inch tab, I'm going to cut 1 inch off of this. So instead of 3.5, I'm going to bring it down to 2.5 and cut it off. And then I'm going to put these scraps away for tomorrow. All right, so I now have a 1 inch wide strip, and I am just going to fold it in half. Now, if this were directional paper, obviously I would need to make sure I was careful about the direction, because I want this to go on this side. Or if I wanted it to go on this side, I would have to make sure that it was oriented that way. But this is non-directional, so I'm just going to fold this in half. I'm not even using the scoreboard. Fold it in half. And then I remember I wanted this to be 1.5 inches, so I'm going to trim it to 1.5 inches. Now, if you're using the longer paper clips, is that right? I wanted that 1.5. No, this one was 2. That's right, I like this size, which is 1.5. 1 by 1.5. No, this is 3/4 by 1.5. Gosh, sorry, I'm We've got so many samples here that I'm forgetting which one I wanted. I liked this size, which is, let me double check myself. This is not 1 inch, this is 3/4 of an inch, but I do like the 1 inch. So I'm gonna go with what I said. I'm gonna do 1 inch, let's do 1 inch by 2 inches. We're gonna make this size, 1 inch by 2 inches. Okay, so you can stick with what you've got, 1 inch, but don't cut it off at 1.5 like I just said, cut it off at 2 inches. So you're gonna have this size, 1 inch by 2 inch. Or whatever size you decide, because that part doesn't really matter. And now what I'm going to do is make a slit. So I've got this folded over. I'm going to open it up. If you're going to corner around it, now's the time you want to corner around it. It just gives you, it just makes it a little bit easier if you do it now. So if you're going to corner around, I'm not going to round this one, but if you're going to corner around it, round the corners now. Then I am going to bring over my cutting bit, and I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to put my fold where my top fold is on one of my lines, and it doesn't, let's see, I'm going to move in for that, see if I can, I'm going to try to move in for this, make it a little bit, so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to put the crease on one of the lines, and I'm going to put my handy dandy purple tape to hold it in place. And then I'm going to use that ruler that I had just to hold it down. And I want to put my paper clip 1/4 of an inch, sorry about that. I wanted to put my paper clip 1/4 of an inch in. That gives me a little bit of room at the edge so it doesn't stick out, but it's not obvious or bulky on the back. So I measure it in 1/4 of an inch. And so I've got this on my crease here. I'm going to go down 1/4 of an inch, and I just make a tiny slit. Obviously, I would flip this and do it in reverse if I wanted the paper clip to go on the other side. But pages open this way, so this is, and I want the creased or folded over edge on the end of my tab. So unless you turn books the other way, you want your paper clip to be on this side. So I'm measuring down from the crease. Here's my crease if you can't see it. And I'm measuring down 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just making a tiny little slit. I don't need it to be very big because the paper clip doesn't take up much room. Maybe a 1/2 inch or so. I don't know, not even maybe that much. Let's see if I can get it there. Oh, there you go. Just a tiny little slit. Doesn't take much at all. Sorry about trying to work in frame. Then I'm going to take my paper clip. There we go, paper clip. And I want the short side of the paper clip on the inside. So I'm going to come in from the back, and I'm going to tuck the paper clip in that slit that I just made, just like so. That's it. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out so you can see what I'm doing there. Okay, so I've got my paper clip on the inside. The short side is on the inside. I'm going to use my double-sided adhesive to hold that in place. And I might even put 2 on there just to make sure, because this is going to be removable. It's going to come in and out. So I'm going to put double-sided adhesive on the back of that. Okay, and now I'm going to fold it over, and I've got my paper clip tabbed into place, or slotted into place, and I'm going to put my wet glue to glue it down. And every once in a while, even with the tab in here, it gets kind of gummed up, and I apologize for making you wait while I ungum it. Okay, a little bit of wet glue, and I'm going to use the clamps because I want to make sure it's lined up, and I want to make sure it seals all the way around. So I am going to clamp it for a moment. Okay. And it's clamped, and now I am going to put the jump ring, or the circle for the jump ring on. And again, you can use standard size eyelets. I just happen to like these little itty bitty guys. And you know what? While that's sealing for just a second, I'm going to show you how, if you don't have eyelets, you can use another option. So I've got this scrap cardstock, and it's a little bit thicker weight cardstock. And I'm going to go with my smallest punch first. That's an itty bitty tiny hole. I don't even know what it is, 1/16, maybe, sure. I'm going to make I want one for the front and one for the back. So I'm going to make 2 little holes. And then I'm going to take the next size up, which is what, maybe an 1/8 or a fourth. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to center it around that hole. As you can see in there, the hole's there. I'm going to center it and punch it out. And the same thing. You can do this with any size circles to make any size hole reinforcers that you want. Okay. So I've got those 2 hole reinforcers. And now these are just little itty bitty guys, but I can still use them to make my paper a little bit sturdier, a little stronger if I don't want to use eyelets. So I would put this in place right over on the end of, here, let me get the one that has it, right over the end corner. And I would glue those right over the end corner and then punch a hole in the center of it. And then I've got my reinforced hole. So there's that other option. Okay. And here we go, and I'm going to ink the edges because it's easier to do now. Okay, when you are putting your charms on, you can certainly put them at the top. Like, okay, so here is my paper clip, and here is the edge of my page, and it gives me about 1/4 of an inch overlap, which I really like. I think that's just the right amount. It makes the page stand out without making it stick out too far, which is why I measured it 1/4 of an inch. You can put it up at the top, but I much prefer it to go down at the bottom. So I am going to use my tiny hole punch and make a hole. Now, the farther up you go in it, the more strength it gets, but then you can't put your eyelet in, or you can put your eyelet in, but your jump ring won't fit. So if you go up too high, your jump ring won't have room to fit down below your eyelet. So I go in the bottom right corner. Can't even see where I am here. Sorry about that. I've got to look up to make sure I'm in the bottom. And then you can see there's my little hole in the bottom right corner. If I go down too far, then it can easily pull out. If I go too far to the right, it can easily pull out. So I want it, and I eyeball it in that bottom right corner. I'm going to use one of these little itty bitty eyelets. And because I can barely see these, I put the little eyelet in, and then I use my, well, maybe I use my tweezers. Okay, it worked perfectly when I was doing the sample, and it works perfectly when I do it all the time. There we go. So I put the eyelet on the edge so that I can make sure it gets in. So you can see right there, there's the eyelet. And now I'm going to use this old wheel tool to set the eyelet. And it's got a little bit of a lip. If you feel it, you can feel the eyelet up just a bit. You put the tip of the eyelet setter in there and bring down, and it smashes it flat. And I'll bring it up there so you can see. See? So when you're using the little ones, it works really well. Okay, and now all I do is choose which charm I want. And this one is, we spent a lot of time with coffee when we were at Disneyland, so I'm going to use this little coffee cup charm. And it's already got the jump ring loaded on it. Now, this is something I do. This is just kind of a Corey tip. I don't see as well as I used to, so I have this table-mounted magnifying glass. And so when I'm working with jump rings or little things or fussy cutting, I bring this guy over. Sorry, you get to see my ceiling. I bring this guy over so that I can see what I'm doing. And so I'm going to open my jump ring. See, most of the time I can't even see where the jump ring starts and stops. And this, I don't know if you can see under there, this allows me to see where the jump ring starts and stops. I'm going to put the jump ring in the eyelet. And even these little itty bitty eyelets, they, it's hard. I know there's a light up above you, and I apologize for that, so you can't see what I'm doing. But basically, I'm just opening and closing the jump ring and using the magnifying glass to make it so I can actually see what I'm doing. So here, I'll bring it up. So I opened and closed. And a standard size jump rings, and I'm sure there's a million sizes, maybe I shouldn't say standard. A jump ring fits really well in that little eyelet. Okay, there's an ugly spot. That's probably just glue, and I can clean that off. And that's it. That's all there is to it. I now have a little charm, or I can put beads there, on the end of a removable or repositionable tab. There we go. Sorry, I'll get it in frame. And that's all there is to it. I hope you enjoyed that project, and I hope it inspired you to give it a try. Have a blessed day, and thank you for watching.